You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
You just got to go out and express yourself.
Fonte with a scooping header.
You just got to get the job done. I'm here to get the job done.
Подача, Остин все-таки забил.
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Pella. Onside, 1-0. The fast shot. Oh my word.
Unbelievable. He ran around a bit like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone. Hello and welcome to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans. My name is Matt Markstone. I'm the host of the show. No matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, thank you for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it. As you are listening to this, the Saints squad has made its way away from England and over to France for its second and final training camp ahead of a few more preseason matches before the season kicks off in just a few weeks. I think we're over the disappointing result at Derby County last weekend. Not the showing we would have liked. And I'll talk about that and the signings and take a lot of your listener questions with this week's guest, Blake Hampton. He's on Twitter at Blake A. Hampton. And this week I asked him, he's coached in the past, and I asked him point blank, what do we really take from this? Is the result at Derby County really that big of a deal? And if so, what are we missing in the squad, and what's going to have to happen for us to be ready to take on the Premier League season? And I asked him all these questions before Mark Hughes came out and made a statement that in order for the club to sign anybody else, people are going to have to be sold first. And I think a lot of us knew that, and Blake kind of hinted at that he didn't think that all that would happen unless we got rid of some people. But just keep that in mind that we spoke before Mark Hughes actually made that statement. So just keep that in mind. And in addition to doing all that, I just want to say thank you for sending in all of the questions. People on Instagram, on the Instagram story with a little ask a question thing. That was the easiest way to get questions in. It seems I got a lot of questions that way. I think we addressed them all. There's maybe one that we didn't know how to answer, but at least we talked about it. So if it ever happens where I ask for questions that way, we don't get to answer them, I'll be sure to answer them on the Instagram story. But this week we didn't have to do that because I think we addressed them all. So anyway, we'll talk about our 3-word match reviews. We'll talk your questions. We'll talk about the result and the squad and all of that with Blake Hampton in just a moment. But before we do that, I just wanted to say I'm very excited. Matt Beeling of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram has redone the logo for the show, and we'll be putting it up in just a few weeks. I'm really excited about that. But I wanted to mention that. So Matt has done the logo for the show from the very beginning. If you're not following him on Instagram, be sure to do that. It's We Are Southampton on Instagram. The link is in the show notes. Be sure to do that. You'll get all the full credits after. For now, here's my conversation with Blake Hampton, and I hope you have a great day. We'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Blake Hampton. He's on Twitter at Blake A. Hampton, and he's been here a few times, but joining me to talk a little bit about the match that was Derby County, if you want to call it a match. The second half kind of got out of hand, but here to talk about that and kind of everything that's been going on in the transfer window and things surrounding Saints and answer questions, of course, is Blake. So Blake, welcome back, and thanks for joining me.
Matt, it is always a pleasure. Thanks for having me back. How are you doing?
I'm good. It is warm. I've been playing hide and go seek for the past 2 hours with the new neighbors and my kids. And it's, at some point I looked up and I was the only adult that was playing. I figured the other ones would get involved, but it was just me. And I was like, all right, I'm done. So now it's warm and I've shut all the fans off so we can hear each other. So in about an hour, it should be nice and sweltering in here and I'll be miserable. But until then, I'm great. How are you?
I'm not bad. I'm on cloud 9 right now. I was able to get out of going to see Mamma Mia with my fiance and the in-laws. So that took about a miracle and a half. So yeah, I get it though. It's about 100 degrees here, and and then about 70% humidity. You walk outside and it feels like you're in a swimming pool. So I just stay inside.
Yeah, no, we're not that bad. It's not that bad here, but it's just unusual for us. And my kids were very disappointed that I made them go outside. They just wanted to play Fortnite all day. I'm like, no, go.
Well, that's the beauty about having dogs instead of kids is we really get to decide what they do rather than the other way around.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, it's all right. So I don't know. So we have quite a few questions for today's show, mostly coming from Instagram, which is complete change from how it normally is. Usually Twitter is the source of those things, but that new feature on Instagram, we can have people ask you a question, then people spam their stories answering them. We just have people ask, and then we'll answer them. And if we don't get to some of them, I will answer them on Instagram. So we'll try to address all those. But we have that. We have people going out. We have Buffal going out on loan. Carrillo's out on loan. Those are two kind of record signings. So we'll talk about all that. But we will talk about the friendly today that we had against Derby County. I think you and I both paid the £5 to watch it.
Unfortunately,
I was like £5 seems a bit. I don't want to complain because I didn't drive there. I didn't I'm sure the price of admission is more than that. I don't want to complain, but I'm like £5 for one game. That is, it was like $8. $7.
Good. That's good business on their end, to be honest. We ended up paying it out of the desperation of being all the way over here across the pond. So that's a good business move on their end.
Yeah, and they made it easy. It wasn't very many clicks. If it would have been more, I might have stayed away. But they made it pretty easy. So I can't fault them too much. But at the end of the game, before we get into it, I asked people to give me their kind of 3-word responses, their 3-word match summaries, and it was something we've been trying to do. Usually associated with the number of minutes of stoppage time. That's how many words we get to describe the match. But there was no stoppage time today, so I just went with the number of goals. Mine was just better by Burnley because I think we will be. I hope we will be. That's the goal at this point. But I want to read you some of them, and then I'll have you give me yours. So Luke Stevens says preseason friendly, basically because people were freaking out, and Twitter kind of went into an uproar. It was kind of funny. And then Jason Lawrence says, please don't overreact. Not going to read this one because it contains some language that is not suitable for the podcast. Daniel Gregory says, we're doomed. He did it via GIF. That was great. Swiss Saint says, yellow usually loses, and I hope that's not true because our away jerseys are yellow. And they look good. We just didn't. Lloyd Collins says, it doesn't matter. Saints World FC says defensively we're awful. Lucy Hynett says defense must improve. Caroline Emerson, we need Yoshi. Joe says
that's not good. If that's what we're clamoring for is Yoshida.
Same old Saints, says Joe. Michael Duke, who added Southampton specifically several times during the match to complain about the fact that there was no live stream. He says no effing live stream. And people kept copying the link to that and sending it to my DMs. And I'm like, yes, I saw it. Like, I understand. I will go back and like it just so everybody can see that I've seen it. Bob Brown says, burn it down, with the emoji that looks like he's being sarcastic. More forward signings. Please replace Tadic. Man, the lifeboats from SFC Paul. I thought that was funny. Buy a striker. Stuart Vahid says, announce relegation now. And Matthew Barnett makes a good point. I think it says defense lacks pace. John Lambert says, don't panic, people. Bob Gibson says, learn from it. There are more, but I think we get the point. Yep. How would you sum up the match in 3 words?
A lot of people said a lot of overreaction things, so I'll just keep it kind of short and say that was bad.
Yeah, okay. I think that's fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, and I don't know, for you, I mean, you've coached at a decent level. You coached a couple club teams and things like that. I remember that from previous conversations that we've had. I mean, it's preseason, right? Like, there's a reason that they do it. there's a reason that we don't just show up after, a month off and train and go through practice and then jump into a first game, because things don't click. And it looked like, if we're going to take a positive from this, we didn't look great in the first half, but we didn't concede any goals. You changed the back line, you changed the shape. There were gaps there. It was clear that, Vestergaard and Hoot were not used to playing with one another, not that can't work necessarily, but, and so before we get into that though, like, I think there's a reason that we do this. And from your perspective, how much do we really need to read into this match in particular in the performance, especially in the second half?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because that's such a polarizing topic, is how useful it is to take information from these preseason games. And what I'm not really looking for the end result, because obviously the end result at this stage is useless in terms of any sort of production throughout the season. What I am looking for in these preseason games is kind of that progression from game to game. Do players look like they know what their role is? When we are going back defensively, is there a shape between our players when we're sitting back past our own midfield line? Are players communicating? Are they moving with the ball? Are they reacting just as quickly? And so when you're looking at these preseason games, yeah, you don't want to necessarily look at the result, but you do want to kind of look at that progression throughout the games, and whether these players are buying into their roles on the squad and they're able to make those tactical adjustments. Because, as players' fitness improves, you would hope that their tactical awareness improves as well. And so that's really what you're wanting to look for throughout these games. And so, with this one particularly, we can go into a lot with what we particularly saw, but that's what you're wanting to look at through these preseason games. Not the result, but you're wanting to see how that progresses throughout the preseason.
Sure. And we saw, looking at the starting lineup, it could have been a number of formations, I guess. And it was interesting to see how Hughes got Armstrong and El-Nussi into the lineup. And it looked like it was a 3-4-3 to start through most of the first half. Maybe a 5-4-1 when we were defending with Austin kind of up top. But I thought that Lamina and Armstrong in the middle of that 3-4-3, playing central midfield, that's a pretty attack-minded midfield, I think. Like, Lamina is not Romeu, and he likes to get forward more, and he likes to do the attacking. And so I thought, like, that's a pretty offensive-heavy lineup. And you have some pace out wide with Redmond. I would say our wingbacks didn't offer a ton of pace with James Ward-Prowse and Matt Targett, but I was looking at that going, like, we need maybe a little bit more control. It didn't seem like I was expecting us to dominate the ball a little bit more than we did, even though we were playing away. It's not like the stadium's full. And I didn't see us do that. And that, I think, more than anything concerned me in terms of how we played today in the first half.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what, kind of going off of what you said, Lamina and Armstrong are both very attacking minded players. And so what you saw a lot, especially in that first half, was Lamina and Armstrong would both push forward. And then having those wing backs, when you're having a 5 at the back system, they're pushing very high up the field. Bertrand, his natural instinct is to go forward as well. And so he's kind of pushing into that attack in almost a center defensive mid role when he goes forward. And then we have pushed so many players forward with our wing backs not having much pace there. So many times Derby County were able to counter on us. And then we have the blazing speed of Hoot and Stevens in the back. And when you have Derby 3 versus those two, it's just not going to look good. And that's something that when you're looking, even though, yes, it is preseason, that's something that can easily be fixed. You look at that formation, and you start interchanging the players that we could have potentially had in there, whether they were on the bench today, whether they're not currently in the lineup, and you think, man, there's just not a lot of pace back there. There's just not a lot. And so when you're trying to think about all those players pushing forward, you're like, man, your Saints are really leaving themselves vulnerable in this type of formation.
Yeah, and I could almost live with that if we would have created a bunch of chances today. But we were committing a ton of people forward, which I think, I don't want this to sound like I am just complaining to complain, because I know last year a lot of us talked about, in the last 2 seasons, a lot of us complained about the lack of attack going forward, a lack of commitment going forward, a lack of kind of creativity. But today we just never settled. It didn't seem like it didn't seem like today was working. And so with that, we're throwing all these guys forward. We don't have the pace to get back with, you have to think that Cedric is going to be playing right wing back throughout the season if he's here. And I think he will, because we don't have a replacement over there yet. And unless we're going to go out and get one soon, then I don't know. I just hope he's going to be there. And I think that solves a little bit of the issue. If you have Bertrand playing on the left, great. But I can almost see Hughes playing Bertrand in that left center back spot in order to keep Targett happy and keep him at the club, because I don't think Targett's going to settle again this year to play second fiddle,
Yeah, and that's, I think that would be a really big part as well, because I think offensively you saw an idea of what we were trying to implement. We were trying to get it out to those wing backs. They were going to push up high. And then when we started getting into more of an attacking position, all three of our attacking players, Elenassi, Austin, and Redmond, all three of them were in the box. And the amount of times last season that I saw three players in the box when we were trying to play in a cross, I could probably count it on one hand.
Yeah.
So you can see an idea there on what they're trying to do in the attacking end, whip those balls into the box. But I think with especially those two players that we had at the time in that game, there's just not enough quality, to execute that game plan.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, with Cedric and Bertrand, if you have those wing backs out there, it may be an entirely different conversation that we're having right now. But with that current lineup, it just didn't do the job today.
No. And like I said, I don't want to overreact. I don't want to make it a bigger deal than it is. But the first half I would have thought that with the lineup we had out there that we should have been able to create some chances, but we really didn't. And Derby had some chances to go ahead, and they shot poorly. So we got out kind of alive and went into halftime at 0-0. You come out the second half, you make changes, and it kind of falls apart. I mean, Vestergaard nearly gets on the score sheet right away, right? He comes on for his debut, and you have James Ward-Prowse out there, so you have a decent quality set piece taker, which I think at this point he's got to be near the only one. Him and Bertrand, really.
Yeah.
I don't know who else you would have take a set piece, but he's out there. He takes it. Vestergaard gets on the end of it, just can't put it away. But then, we just kind of fell apart. That mistimed tackle from Vestergaard in that attempt to clear the ball. I mean, McCarthy came up big a couple times in the first half, and you can't expect him to do that all the whole time. And they went up, and then from there it was kind of just it kind of looked like the same old thing. I saw Hoot get beat in the back post once, just kind of not paying attention, kind of switching off. You had a couple times where he seemed to be yelling at people, but people kind of gave up once the first person took a shot. Nobody closed down and to clear, and it left the guy kind of open for another one. And so at that point I was pretty frustrated, and I just was like, it's preseason. I'm not going to get all amped up, but I am going to watch and see how they react. And, I don't know, overall, not a great performance, but like you said, it's preseason, and we just need to see how they move through this and kind of, does the system work, and how do they change it for next match, I guess.
Yeah, there's two sides of this, and I think it's kind of important to know both sides. So there are the players' side, where the players individually need to look at themselves and say, decompress from this performance and say, okay, what went wrong and how do I better myself in preparation for the season? And then it's also on the other end, where it's the managerial standpoint, and Mark Hughes, and he needs to look at himself and say, okay, why did that go so poorly, and how do we need to make those adjustments? And I think, especially from the managerial side, it will be interesting to see, as I was mentioning earlier, that progression up into the season on our tactics. And that was something that I've always kind of been a little critical about Hughes about to begin with. I think he does a good job of getting the most out of his players that he has on the pitch. But I'm very precautious on how his ability to allow players to buy into the tactics and players to know their roles within a system and being able to execute that to perfection. I'm a little skeptical on that, and that was one of the biggest issues I saw today, was just the overall players knowing their roles, where to be, how to shift defensively, and it led to 3 goals from Derby. And it'll just be interesting going forward. These next couple, I think it's like 3 or 4 more preseason matches. It'll be interesting to see how that adjusts and how we progress as a unit leading up to the Premier Open.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to go away to France for a week, and then they'll come back. They will play Dijon, FCO. No idea who they are. They'll play Celta Vigo, and then they'll play Borussia Mönchengladbach. So those are the 3 before we open with Burnley, and of course that's on a Sunday. So I mean, they're gonna take this week away. All the guys who are at the World Cup, so Cedric, Bednarak, and Yoshida will all be back. They'll get a training camp in. I wouldn't expect to see very much of them next Saturday, but I would say by the following Wednesday, I would expect us to be putting out probably our best starting lineup for the first 45 at least. And then you would kind of expect the same thing Saturday against Mönchengladbach. You would expect them to be, I don't know, I think you would expect them to be kind of ready, almost ready to go at that point, at least for about 60 minutes or so. And then with the changes. But I don't know. It looks like we're going to persist with that back 3 or that back 5. I want to say we have somebody who can anchor the middle of it now, but it's, do we have the pace to cover him? Because if Vestergaard showed one negative today, it's that he's not fast at all. And granted, he's been back a week, but he's not per Mertesacker slow. I don't want to throw that on there, but he is not pacey, and that's okay. You can't be everything. If he was all of those things, he would be, a 75 million pound central defender or whatever the hell we sold Van Dijk for.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that 3 at the back, because we tried that a couple of times last season to begin under Pellegrino, and we all saw how that was. Just absolutely miserably. And I've never seen Southampton play with 3 at the back and be overly successful with it. There just hasn't been a moment where I've seen us play that formation and it's been just, an epiphany of a formation comparatively to our 4 at the back, And so I think it's just kind of the new trend that's going on now around the world of football. And so we just think, that's the new thing. We're going to buy into that because everyone else is doing it. And so we're just kind of forcing it almost. I mean, that's just kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, I would say that the only time that I think we were really successful with it would be, there were a few games under Koeman where we implemented it, I think because we were leaking goals mostly. And we played it for a few matches. It worked for a little while. People figured it out, and then we went away from it just as quickly. And, I don't know, but like you said, it looks like this is a real thing. And my biggest thing is, even when we played 4-4-2 last year for a while under Hughes, that West Ham game is what I go back to because I was there and I could see it all. We just lack control in the middle of the field with only 2 midfielders, without kind of that number 10 able to drop in and help out. Do we have 2 guys who have that right balance of being able to hold the game together, to break up play, to drive it going forward, and also just have some control over that? And I don't know if we do. We've seen with Lamina today and Armstrong, I'm not sure it worked. And so I do worry about that a little bit, but like you said, it's all gonna kind of go forward and be okay. But yeah. All right. Do you have any other thoughts on the game or anything else that you're kind of worried about or anything?
I know you mentioned that the combination of Lamina and Armstrong didn't work out the best. But honestly, Armstrong individually, he looks like he's already in mid-season form, man. He looks good out there. And I know that some people were a little critical of him coming in, not being that flashy signing, that 20 million pound signing that everyone's clamoring for when the transfer window opens. Man, he just looks like a workhorse out there, and he's just got some real quality, and like he's going to get it. He's got that motor that Shane Long has, but he actually has the quality to back it up in the Premiership. So, I think he's going to be a fan favorite this season, and I'm excited to see how that all looks.
Yeah, I think it was like £7.5 million, and I feel like it was £7.5 million well spent. He looked good. I didn't see very many negatives regarding him today. Yeah, 7.16 according to Transfermarkt. That's what he cost, £7.16 million. So I feel like that's we have other signings out there. We had a lot of money on the pitch today, and I'll take his performance.
And a lot on the bench too.
Yeah. And a lot on loan, which I guess we can kind of move to. Because, now we have, our signings so far as the time we're recording, and I haven't seen us really linked with anything major since then. Otherwise, we might have held off and waited a little closer to time of release for this. But we have Armstrong, El Nussi, Angus Gunn, and Yannick Vestergaard. Those are our signings so far. From your perspective, from what you've seen, just whether it's training videos or the matches and stuff so far, like how are you feeling about them? I was actually kind of surprised that we didn't see Angus Gunn get in the game at all today. But I was a little shocked myself. I think this is kind of a feel good moment for the club. Overall, these players that are incoming, it'll just be interesting to see how all of this is kind of implemented. I know we'll probably talk about the outgoings here in a minute, but the thing is, the reality is we've had 5 managers over the last 5 years. I think that's what it is. I don't know if that's 100% the right number there. But each one of those managers are trying to bring in different types of players. They're giving their wish list to our board. Our board's trying to go out and get them. So what you see on the pitch there is the result of, 4 or 5 different ideas when trying to create a team. And so what happened last year, that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like when you bring in a bunch of random players with no actual plan on how they're all going to mesh together. When you have a bunch of different people trying to bring a plan together, that's what it ends up looking like. And so when I look at these players that they're trying to bring in, I'm trying to look for, is there a set plan on what we're trying to do? Or are we just trying to, plug holes on what we believe are the issues? And I personally believe it's a little bit of both, that we have a little bit more of a plan that we have in the past. We're not just spending money to spend money. I think we're actually spending money on some quality players. But at the same time, I don't know if you put them into our lineup, if you can say, yeah, we're definitely a better team because of that. I know on the defensive end with Vestergaard, I can say that we have a little more defensive quality back there, but shifting those other players in comparatively to the players that we may have moved out, are we a better team because of that? And I don't know if I have an answer for that yet. I would say that compared to last year, yes. But if you go back just a little bit further and you look at the players that we lost, when you talk about losing Mane, when you talk about losing Pella, even Tadic, like, we're going to struggle to recreate a front line that has that much quality in it. And I can say that we've taken steps towards that. We've done a much better job of trying to address it there. But I think it's still going to take some doing. And I guess this would be kind of a good time, and maybe earlier than normal in the episode, but to move towards some questions. We got kind of a lot of questions to try to get through. And if there's anything that you feel we don't cover or any point you wanted to make after that, then we'll make sure and kind of circle back to it. But let's get to some questions. And as I mentioned, I don't know if I got all the way through it. Look on Instagram, the story, the post, Facebook, Twitter, use hashtag SFCDale, send me a direct message or an email. I don't care. However you want to do it. We will do our best to answer your question. So this one is from Courtney Louise White, SFC, on Instagram. And she says, thoughts on Angus Gunn? And is he the right replacement, and should Forrester leave? So a couple questions there. So your initial thoughts on Angus Gunn as a goalkeeper, and if you don't know a ton about him, that's fine. But then, do we think he's a step in the right direction? And then what should we do with Fraser Forrester?
He's a highly rated prospect that's coming up through the English ranks on keepers. I think he's the England U23, U21 keeper. And, he is highly rated in the country. And so, I think he's a quality signing for £15 million. You have to question what his role is with the team and why he would come to a club like Southampton. Because honestly, he could go to quite a few clubs, and I would say even some in the Premier League, and step right into their starting lineup. And so my thinking, I don't know any of this, by the way. This is all just speculative.
Sure.
But my thinking is that we are hoping to get a good year out of Alex McCarthy here. And then with the intention of him potentially moving on to another club the year after that. And then having promised Angus Gunn that number one role for the next season. That's really the only reason why because Angus Gunn kind of had his pick on club that he could go to. He had a few other offers out there, if you were to believe the reporting that was done on this. So it's not like he didn't have any other options. So, I think he's a really good signing. I think overall it is a step in the right direction. I do think we need to get a little bit, have that quality in the youth, going forward. It'll just be interesting to see after this season what that whole situation looks like in that goalkeeping room.
Kind of weird because McCarthy signs the long-term deal. Maybe that's just us guaranteeing ourselves some sort of decent fee when we sell him. Maybe that's part of what it is. Or maybe it was the thought that it looked like Angus Gunn we weren't going to be able to get him. But I don't think you sign a guy to a big long deal like that to be your backup, to be your second string. But I also think that Angus Gunn only comes to Southampton with the idea that he is going to at least have a chance to start. It was clear that his path at City for now was not the path to the first team, wasn't going to be there for him. So you understand him going out on loan to Norwich. He had a decent season. Everything that I've heard about him has been positive and good. He's gonna be good. I just hope we get to see some of him. And you say maybe he plays the under-23s for us for a while, and then he does all the cup games. Like, that seems reasonable. But him just sitting and only getting into the cup matches, I don't think is going to be ideal for him. I don't think that'll make him happy. And honestly, I can't really see Forrester really making the bench even for the majority of our matches now. But what do you think? I mean, you think it's time for Forrester to go? You think he's too young to sit there and be the third string, right? Like, that's not what he's going to want in his career at this point.
What a fall from grace this man has fallen. It seems like
it's faster than he gets down for any low ball. That's for sure.
It's crazy. And, I think I said it a couple years ago and people got a little mad at me for saying this, but I said, even though he's 27, 28, that's still young for keepers in a sense. He's a big dude. He's like 6'7", something like that, something crazy like that. And those bigger guys, the first thing that they lose is their speed to get down for those balls, for their overall reactions, to actually move their bodies. It takes a lot of force to push off and make that instinctual reaction. And so, I think with Forster especially, he wasn't particularly very good at reactions to begin with. He just had the length to be able to stop it. And so when you kind of lose even just a little bit of that half twitch, when your body is moving even just like a microsecond slower than your brain is, that's when you really start to see that decline in those larger individuals. So, that's really what you're seeing here in even just 2 years removed from, being England's number one, even, and so, it's really sad to see that he's kind of fallen this far. I think there's probably some confidence issues going on as well, and that can really mess with the goalkeeper, as you can see with Loris Karius as well. And I think really for all parties involved, he should probably, find his next chapter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from the sounds of it, I would say that Angus Gunn is closer to being England's number one than either Alex McCarthy or Fraser Forster. I think the setup is moving to be slightly younger. I think you have Jordan Pickford, obviously. Butland might have a shout in there. You're going to have Nick Pope poking his head around, and then Angus Gunn is kind of right in that discussion. So if he gets game time, I think that would be kind of it, especially for Forster. But Tim Marshall asks, realistically, where will Saints finish next year? He says, I'm going for 10th. So based on what we've seen so far, and obviously the window's still open and everything else, where would you expect us to finish next year?
This question gets tougher and tougher every year, because, the difference between 10th and 18th is a matter of 4 points these days. So, the optimistic side of me says that it'll probably be middle of the table. I think it's going to be very dependent on Hughes' ability to maintain that positive influence throughout an entire season. And these players buy into a season-long grind of the style of football that Hughes wants to play. And I think that's going to be, I think kind of our range that we can finish is in that between 16 and 8 range. I really don't see us falling into the relegation zone. I don't think we're going to be close to the kind of relegation battle that we were in last season. But at the same time, I just don't see us having the quality to really push for anything. 8 is wow, best case scenario, everything went right. And that's the kind of season we have. So, it's a really big range, but, I think that kind of gives an idea of where we could.
Yeah, I'm always hesitant to say, this is where we're going to finish or this is what we're going to do, because it's really just hard to tell. I mean, we played the team that finished 6th in the championship last year today. It didn't go well.
Yep.
Some people like to say that the difference between the championship and the Premier League, there's a big gap. A lot more people argue that there's not. And I think maybe today shows that the bottom of the Premier League and the top of the championship are kind of there. And, whether it's the refereeing that's a little bit different, Pep Guardiola blamed the balls last year when they played, when they had to go to penalties against Wolves, or whatever it is. Could Derby County do it week in, week out in the Premier League? Probably not. They'd probably finish somewhere down the table, but that's where we were last year. So if we finish 10th, I would be happy. Obviously, I'd be happier we finish higher up the table, but I'll take that. But yeah, I can see us dropping down to 14th or 15th just as easily, which isn't sexy. It's not what you want to hear. But trying to be realistic, not worrying about necessarily overblowing it. We have a question here from Ollie Give the Great. I don't know. He says, what can Southampton do to be the team that made Gareth Bale? And I'll just be honest that I don't know how to answer this question. So I don't think we should.
I'm all in on that. I miss him. I miss Gareth Bale a lot. He should really consider coming back to where it all started, and that would fix a lot.
Yeah, I mean, for me, as a coach, as a teacher, I really try to hammer home to kids, if you work hard, you will improve yourself. I'm not saying that if you work hard, you're going to be Ronaldo or Gareth Bale. There's a certain amount of talent that comes with Gareth Bale being himself, and then kind of being, honing his skills. I'm not sure you make Gareth Bale. If you have a Gareth Bale, you let him do what he does. You build a team around him.
Yep.
You hope to God he doesn't get injured. You enjoy when he goes to play for Real Madrid because he is exciting to watch. So I think that's where that is. But Sexy Moore 12 says, what role does James Ward-Prowse play in the 18-19 season? So we saw him today at right wing back. He played there. He played on the right wing last year. We've seen him play as one of the two kind of holding midfielders, defensive midfielders in the past. He's played as a number 10. He seems to be the guy that has all kinds of skill over a dead ball, but can't establish himself in the lineup. So where do you see him? What's he going to do this year for us? And whether it be on the bench or whether it be as a wing back, or where do you see him?
I have not been a James Ward-Prowse truther, as there are many out there in the Southampton community. I know that he's kind of a fan favorite because, he's one of the few that's kind of come up through our academy to make it to our senior team in recent time. And, kind of what you said. I mean, how many positions did you name that he plays? The thing is, if he was in a position that he was good at, he would stay there. It's not like we're moving him to these positions because we need him. In those positions, we're trying to put him in a position to be successful. And so far, I can't think of one position that he's been in that I thought, yeah, he should be in our starting 11. And I would say, honestly, this right wing back position that he played today, it was probably the best position that he's been in so far. I think he's kind of looked the best in that role compared to what he's done in every other role so far, but just doesn't have the pace, to get up and down that pitch in that kind of role. And so, if you need a good free kick, if you need a good corner kick, he's going to be that guy for you. But the more and more as time goes on, I'm pretty sure he's like 24, man, like 24, 25. He's getting there into a point where the development stops and you got to start producing on the pitch. There's no more excuses at this point. And so you look at this lineup and you think, where is he going to kind of fit in? And I don't know, especially with all the quality we have on that bench today, Højbjerg, Romeu, all these other players that are there waiting for their opportunity. I mean, honestly, I think they all have more quality than him.
Yeah, and it's like you said, there's the promise of him being great all the way up, all the way through the kind of youth development, the England setup, all this stuff. And you're just waiting for him to really bring it and do it. And it seems like it, just as he starts to get going, something happens, or, you just realize, well, maybe that's not that great. Maybe it's just a little bit better than what we had there before, but it's just not it. And you find the one little thing that he can't do that prevents him from being, as a number 10, or, maybe he lacks the pace to play on the wing, or, he just doesn't break up play good enough to play holding midfield, or whatever it is. But, when I think back to like coaching baseball and playing baseball, like sometimes you have guys who can hit really well and you just got to hide them somewhere, on the field. You got to give them a defensive position because they have to play out there, but you want them in the lineup. So where do you do? And the problem is in baseball, the guys are going to come up probably 3 or 4 times. If they're hitting that well, they're going to be at the top of the lineup. They'll probably get 4 bats a game, minimum. James Ward-Prowse, I mean, how many free kicks is he going to take a game? How many corners is he going to take a game? And is it worth it having him on the pitch as a right wing back and sacrificing the pace, or as a holding midfielder and really kind of maybe sacrificing some muscle in the middle of the park so we can have those? And I'm not sure, you look at the number of set pieces that we take, the number of set pieces that are actually converted into goals, is that worth it? And I don't know.
Yeah. And that's a really good point there, is how much worth it is it for him to be a liability in the position that he stands, so that we may have an advantageous position from a free kick standpoint? How much better is James Ward-Prowse at taking these free kicks compared to like Ryan Bertrand? And I don't know. I think the difference between having James Ward-Prowse on there and someone who is better than, like, more quality than him on the pitch, I think that is a bigger gap than it is between James Ward-Prowse and the next best free kick taker on our team. So that's really what you have to look for in terms of, is it worth to have him on the pitch? And as I said, he's about that age where it's time to start producing, man. It's time to start. You're done with the development stage. You got to actually start producing on the pitch.
He's at Blake A. Hampton on Twitter, everybody. Shut your DMs off.
That sounds good.
So let's move on. And I, it's not that I like James Ward-Prowse and I think he's great, but we're just trying to talk about some of the things that we see and at some point everybody's going to have to kind of say, and maybe people are going to disagree, and that's fine. I'll stop trying to sugarcoat it or soften it at all. As Buffalo is gone, do you see us getting another attacker in? This is from Michael Maria 67. So do you see us bringing in another attacker on the wing, or what do you think?
I hope so. When you saw that lineup that went out today, and you look at our bench, so we played with 2 wingers today, in Elenasi and Redmond, and then you looked at our bench, and the only other winger we had on there was Josh Sims. And, I think Josh Sims is a fine player. I haven't seen him play in 2 years. He's had a year-long injury. I don't know what he looks like out there. And so our depth on the wing is not the best. And so I genuinely believe that we need to bring in another attacking player, especially with pace, especially out there on that wing. I don't know if I'm not certain that we're done in the transfer window, though. Get all that done and then have all your players in and start implementing your ideas. I mean, unless there's something magical that happens in the next 2 weeks, I would almost think that we're done in the transfer window. And that's something that, maybe we kind of start to talk about here.
Yeah.
But,
well, I mean, if we're done now, the fan base would be upset. I think there are still holes in the lineup from previous seasons that we need to fill. And if you're only going to make one other signing, do you make it on the wing? Do you make it a striker or a forward, or what? Where would you make it if you had to pick just one more, or maybe even a center back? Because I think people are still asking for that. I don't think we're going to get that, but I think people are still asking for that.
I think our center backs are going to look a little bit better when we get Yoshida and Bednarak back. I think Bednarak is, a lot of people are really discounting him comparatively to the rest of our center backs. I think he kind of fits a perfect mold on what we're missing back there right now. He has a little more pace back there. He's very good tactically. I don't know how much you watched him in the World Cup with Poland, but just kind of his positional, movement and what he was doing. He was so quality out there for him, and so I think in terms of just kind of a tactical awareness, you kind of have to put him back there, and he's going to be a very good fit back there. But in terms of what we still need, we just need more goals, honestly. And I think that, obviously preseason, there's some stuff that needs to be worked out. And how many times did Charlie Austin and Manolo Gabbiadini touch the ball today? I mean, had to have been less than 10 times, that the ball was actually at their feet and they were actually able to do something. And so that is kind of a result of both their inability to find the space and also our attacking buildup to find the space. So, I think a lot of people would say that we probably need another striker. I think both that we have are fine. I think they're both serviceable and they'll get us, goals this season. I think we need more playmakers on that wing. Mm-hmm. And, I know Redmond's looked fine. I thoroughly enjoy seeing him blast the ball over the goal about 3 or 4 times a game. But, I'd just like to see a little more quality on that wing to be able to make some plays happen so we can actually get the ball in the box and, be a little more creative out there in the attacking play.
I would say as well, looking at that lineup, you have a bunch of guys that can play in different spots. Like, we said before, we can move, change our Prowse around on that right-hand side, kind of anywhere you want. You can move Bertrand from left center back to left wing back, or just standard left back. Sam McQueen can do that as well. He can play as a winger. And I think what will happen is they will look down that list and go, we can put guys here if necessary. And a game, sure. A cup match, sure. Do I want my starting wingers to be Sam McQueen and James Ward-Prowse in a Premier League match, going away to Man United. Like, no, I don't. But I think that, the club might be looking at it and going like, well, we've spent this much money. These are the guys we're going to rely on. We have serviceable backups, and that's going to be it. And I don't know, I don't know if you can argue with that, because it's, it's not our money. It's not, we don't have the long-term vision of the club. We don't know what their kind of goals are and what the, our Chinese owners' goals are, or anything else. So it's tough to do. Although I feel like I'm just being a constant downer today, which is I'm not even in a bad mood. So I don't know why I'm doing that.
Well, I was just thinking that as well. I'm not trying to be negative. I guess it's more a little realistic at the time, but I'm excited for the season. Nonetheless, I'm excited to see how this all unfolds. There are just things that we need to fix at the moment, and I hope that we're able to do that in the weeks leading up to it.
Yeah. So I think we did answer a little bit of Ollie Quinton's question as well, where he says, how many signings do you think there will be, if any? And I think we kind of just talked about it a little bit, and we have one more on the transfer window, but I wanted to get to one that we got from Twitter. It was sent via direct message. So Christian Candler asks, why do you think Buffal never got his act together? Now he's gone. He's on loan at Celta Vigo. Obviously, I mean, he's been through 3 managers now. He's managed 54 appearances, most of them from the bench, 4 goals. 2 of them will live on in our memory kind of forever, I think, because they were that good. But I mean, what is it about him? Is it just a bad fit for the club? Do you think he'll be back, or do you think this is a loan deal that's going to eventually be permanent somewhere else? What
a polarizing figure that he has been since the day that he walked into Southampton. And he has, I mean, this may be a little over the top, but I think he may have the most talent of any player that's walked through Southampton. Just natural, gifted talent at football that's ever walked in through Southampton. I genuinely believe that. And I have this debate with a lot of different people. Who is at fault? Is it the player's responsibility to, just put their head down and work regardless of what the situation is? Or is it the club's responsibility to make sure that the psychology of players, is always at the highest priority, and that they're making sure that all their players are at the happiest standpoint? And, typically I would give the benefit of the doubt to the club, and all the things that kind of tie into that. But, I don't want to be speculative and continue to be down and stuff, but it's not the first occasion in recent history that we've seen players unhappy at the club. And it could be for one reason or the other. They want to make that move to the bigger club. They want to, this and that. But there has been a track record of unhappiness with players at the club. And Buffal is a special case because I really do think that there was, he does have a little bit of a temper problem. He really does have that millennial mentality when it comes to things. And so, yes, I think there's just as much fault with the player and just not a good fit with the club to begin with. But I also think it's kind of time to look at our club. And, I actually read an article, I think it was from The Guardian, that England, they brought a psychologist with them.
They did.
And that was one of the big reasons why these players were able to, no matter how strenuous the grind was of this cup, they were able to upkeep their energy levels, their, just overall happiness was having a psychologist with them, and I've always been a huge advocate for psychology in sports. I think that is one of the most undervalued qualities in sport is the psychology of, players' mentalities. And so I think that Southampton probably needs to do a little better of managing all these personalities, all these different stars, no matter what kind of star you think they are, in the lowest rung or the highest rung.
Sure.
In their mindset, they are stars. And so how to manage all these different personalities, all these different stars, I think some of that responsibility does fall on the club, and you need to make sure that you're doing your best to keep these £20 million investments. I don't want to call human beings investments, but in a business term, they are. You want to do everything you can so that you're getting the most out of it.
Yeah.
And so I think there was probably some times where, we kind of just let go of Bufal. We were decided, he's just kind of off on his own and we don't really care. And I don't think that's really the way it should be going.
Well, you mentioned earlier too, the 5 different managers or so in 5 years, the kind of remnants of I don't want to say failed projects, but the remnants of different projects and different mentalities. You now have our 2 record signings out on loan. And I think that shows that we missed the mark in recent seasons. That shows failure, because your record signings should be on the field. They should be challenging they should be in the first team. They should earn that. They don't get that by just being record signings. And granted, you're a record signing because of the market fluctuates and all this stuff, but they were purchased not to be squad players. They were purchased to be kind of, stalwarts in the team, and neither of them are that good. Neither of them have proved it. I don't know if Carrillo is that good. I think Bufal has the talent, but something hasn't worked. But unless Hughes goes at the end of this year, I can't see Bufal coming back and being in a team. And I think that we're hoping he has a good year. We're hoping that, his value goes back up and then he gets moved on, because I think the fee for him will be higher if he has a decent season at Celta Vigo. Carrillo, he's gone back to be with Pellegrino again, right? Like that just seems he's just going to follow that guy around from wherever he goes. So I don't know. That's, for me, that's where that's at. But we have one more question, if you're okay with doing this. And he said, it's from Alf Montague from Instagram. And he says, do you think the transfer window has been as good as everybody says?
At the moment, yes. There's still some transfer window left to go. If it closes, and this is still the situation that we're in, I am going to be a little more hesitant to change that answer over to no. And I think, honestly, a lot of this is going to be very dependent on, our big signings. Vestergaard, we have a lot of depth at center back, but I don't know how much quality we actually have back there. So, having Vestergaard is really, it's a little unfair for him. But honestly, him coming in and just being a 6'6" monster with long hair, people are expecting him to be Van Dijk. Mm-hmm. And whether that's fair or not, that's what people are expecting.
That's it's for him to,
it's for him to be that. And, it may not be fair, but if he's not that, then, people may be a little bit down on him. And Elinesi, I think that he really needs to produce in a big way for us to be successful this year. And, he's our big money signing. He's one of our highest record signings that we've had. And so you expect him to be quality, but, needing him to be superstar quality for us to have a decent season, I don't know if that's fair expectations on him as well. So, I think that they're really good signings on paper. This is something that we should definitely talk about a couple months from now.
Yeah. Last question for you, just kind of hypothetical. You pick the starting lineup as of now with the squad we have now. What, just not even any players, just what formation are we lining up with opening day against Burnley?
What would I like, or what do I think it'll be?
You can give me both.
I would like a 4-2-3-1, and I think we'll start with a 3-4-3.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I just don't see, like, Mark Hughes has been playing that the whole time. I think that's what he has really been practicing in these training sessions. I think that that's really what they're trying to work for. And I I think it's a little too late to go back and change that now.
You're right. And if we get down the road and he's got to change it, then maybe he does. I don't think he's afraid to make changes. He quickly switched away from that 4-4-2 last year when we looked like we couldn't control the midfield. But we'll see going forward. So yeah. Well, Blake, unless you have anything else you'd like to add, we're right at about an hour. So I'll do some cutting and we should be all right. But anything else you'd like to add before we go?
No, Matt, I appreciate you having me on. It's always a pleasure getting to talk to you.
I know this is great. I enjoy. I say it a lot, but this is the best part. Like this recording, it's always I'm always nervous before we get started, and you're worried, are you going to miss something? But really, just like us talking, gets the ideas out of your head. It kind of hopefully gets some perspective, and hopefully the people listening have some idea of they have ideas going around in their head, and this is us, and hopefully they're going like sitting in their car going like, no, what are you talking about that for? It should be like this, and that's good enough for me. Or they're going like, oh, these guys actually maybe understand a little bit. That's also good. But no,
sure. Man, I'm gonna close my laptop and I'm gonna have to throw up my shields.
Yeah.
After this for all the
right.
hatred that's coming this way, but
you'll also have some hatred if you don't get that bed set up before Mamma Mia's over. So
these beds are just sitting here, and I like they're propped up against the wall, and I just don't have any sort of desire to try and put this together right now. So
sorry.
It's all good.
Did you go to IKEA?
No, that would have been awful. put together this bed. No, I got it from my mom.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thank you for talking with me, and we will talk to you soon.
Yeah, man. I'll talk to you later.
And that does it for this episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you enjoyed it. Special thanks goes out to Blake Hampton for joining me and also leading the James Ward-Prowse hate train. You can send your fan mail or your criticisms of him at Blake A. Hampton on Twitter. He's a big boy. He can take it. And I know that not everybody loves James Ward-Prowse, but I know a lot of people do. I love him too. We'll just let it go. Anyway, if you want to get in contact with the show, you can do so on Twitter or Instagram at SFCDELL_IVERY. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/SFC Delivery. There is no underscore in the Facebook address. You can email the show at southamptondelivery@gmail.com, or you can submit a question on Twitter using SFC Del or sending a direct message or however you want. If you're new to the show and you haven't yet done so, please be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Acast, Google Play, TuneIn Radio, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're an iTunes user or an Apple Podcast user, please consider leaving a review. It really does help spread the show to other people. If not, that's okay. Just share the show with somebody, encourage them to listen, and show them how to subscribe if they don't know. Shout out to our partner, the Southampton page on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. For all your Saints FC news and needs, be sure to visit the Southampton page on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. The links are in the show notes. Get on board with that. Once again, the logo is designed by Matt Beeling of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. The new one that he just did will be up in a few weeks. All music for this episode comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games. And the end of show credits that you're listening to right now is Aim is True by Potty Timber. Links to those are in the show notes if you need. And as always, my name is Matt Markstone. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you enjoyed it. And until next time, remember that together, we march on.